good evening. You're listening to Quiet Sleep Cat, a calm place for slow stories and gentle rest. You don't need to focus. Just relax and let the night carry you. By the time the next week begins, Moonlight Town has changed in the way only quiet places change. No banner announces it. No one points to the sky and says, "Now the season has turned." Instead, the air becomes a little cooler at the edges. The evenings arrive a little earlier. The lanterns are lit a little sooner. And one night, without warning, the clerk notices that autumn has already stepped gently into the town and sat down among the lights. The clerk stands outside the post office just after dusk, one hand resting at the edge of the door, the other holding the strap of the messenger bag, without any real need. The bag is almost empty tonight. There are no urgent papers, no parcel slips, no unusual envelopes needing to be checked. The evening is free enough to notice, and so the clerk notices. The sky is deeper than it was a few nights ago. Not darker in a heavy way, only calmer. The last pale line of daylight has already faded behind the roofs, and the warm lanterns along the street seem to glow with more confidence than before, as if they understand that the nights now belong to them a little longer. Breath in and out. The clerk looks toward the bridge. The lantern there burns in its familiar place, steady, golden, kind. Beyond it, other lanterns line the stone road in a sequence of quiet light. And farther still, one can just see the pale glow that marks the path to the shared garden. Several changes have come with the season. The bakery now closes a little earlier. The windows of the library glow softer and for less time. The benches along the main street are cooler to the touch, and their wood carries the clean, dry smell that arrives when late summer has fully let go. Near the fences, the herbs have grown fuller. Near the bridge, the water carries sharper reflections. Near the path to the shared garden, the low lanterns look even warmer against the cooler air. And in the shared garden itself, the lantern flowers have changed. The clerk has not yet walked there tonight. And yet from here, by the way the little lights gather at the edge of the path, there is already a sense that something in the garden has reached the season it has been waiting for. The old man's words return to the clerk's mind. Lantern flowers. A garden prepared in advance. Light moved gently into place. A returning granddaughter. A path meant to feel familiar at once. Nothing dramatic has happened. No great event has shaken the town. And yet, something important feels near. Not because it is loud, not because it is uncertain, only because the town itself seems to be preparing. The lanterns have been lowered in certain places. The path behind the fences has been swept. The hooks have been adjusted. The glass has been polished. The shared garden has been arranged not for display, but for recognition. The clerk steps down from the post office doorway and begins walking slowly. The stone beneath the shoes sounds different tonight. Not louder, but clearer, as if the cooler air has sharpened the shape of every step. A leaf turns once in the breeze and lands near the post office wall. At the tailor's window, a curtain shifts, then settles. At the bakery, a last warm stripe of light lies across the pavement before the door dims. The town is entering its autumn rhythm. Not the rhythm of hurry, not the rhythm of endings, the rhythm of preparation, of warm things set against cool air, of light arranged before darkness deepens, of paths made easy for returning feet. The clerk passes the lantern that had once been lowered above a bench. It still hangs there, just low enough to warm the seat and soften the shadows beneath it. Someone has cleaned the glass again. Someone has adjusted the flame. Someone has not forgotten. The clerk pauses for a moment beneath it, looking at the shape of the light on the bench. Then, without any urgency, turns toward the path behind the fences. Tonight, it feels less like a place to investigate and more like a place to witness. Whatever has been prepared there is close now. The town seems to know it. The lanterns seem to know it. And somewhere ahead, in the garden where little lights have been shared from one evening to the next, a season is quietly arriving exactly on time. The path behind the fences is even softer than before. A faint layer of dry leaves has gathered against the lower rails, but the center of the path is clear, swept, and easy to walk. The little pale lantern at the entrance glows like a small moon, and beyond it, one lower lantern after another leads the eye into the deeper quiet of the shared gardens. The clerk walks slowly, not wanting to miss the details that have changed. The latch by the first gate is easier to see now. The pathstone near the bend reflects a little more light. The lantern beside the herb shelf has been shifted just enough to warm the rosemary without over-brightening the fence. A second lantern, smaller and more amber, has been placed near the bench where the folded cloth once rested. Every adjustment is minor, and yet, as the clerk moves deeper into the path, the whole place feels more complete than before. Not fuller, not busier, only more ready. Breath in and out. At the turn near the time bed, the clerk notices that the bench has been wiped clean, and that a new cloth, thicker, warmer, and neatly folded, rests on one corner. A ceramic cup sits beside it, empty, but placed with such quiet intention that it seems less forgotten than reserved. Near the base of the bench, a basket lined with soft fabric holds several small lantern shades, waiting to be polished if needed. Nothing is left carelessly. Everything is placed as though someone expects use, expects company, expects return. The shared garden opens ahead, and at once, The clerk can see that it has changed with the season. The herb beds are fuller, more mature. The rosemary is darker. The mint spills over the edges of its row. The flowers near the back fence hold richer color. And the young lantern flowers that were green and waiting only nights ago have begun to turn. Not fully orange yet, not all at once, but enough. Enough that under the little lanterns, several of them really do resemble tiny folded lanterns hanging beneath their leaves. Enough that someone returning along this path would know immediately what season had arrived. Enough that the name the granddaughter gave them no longer feels like a child's invention, but like the truest possible description. The little lanterns above the beds have been arranged with particular care. One over the lantern flowers is lower than before, its warm glow touching the husked shapes just enough to deepen their color. Another over the herb path has been angled sideways, so that anyone entering at dusk will see the flowers first, not by accident, but by welcome. Near the gate, a lantern has been cleaned so thoroughly that the glass is nearly invisible, leaving only the flame and its calm halo to appear in the air. The clerk looks across the whole garden and understands that the old man, the herb grower, and perhaps others too, have not simply been tending it as usual. They have been preparing it to be seen, preparing it to be recognized, preparing it to say, without any signboard, without any spoken explanation, "You are expected." In one corner of the garden, a narrow wooden table has been brought out. On it sits a small oil tin, a tray of clean cloths, a bundle of spare hooks, a cup with trimming scissors, and a small box where used wicks have been placed neatly aside. This is not the arrangement of a place left to chance. It is a working table, a table for finishing touches, for those last careful acts that do not change a garden's identity, but make it ready to receive someone beloved. The clerk feels, more strongly than before, that the story of the missing lantern has been moving toward this all along. Not toward solving a problem, but toward understanding how a town prepares a welcome without announcing it. How a bridge lantern can be borrowed, returned, and then remembered differently. How a path lantern can be lowered by inches and still change the meaning of an evening. How a polished pane of glass can become a message. How the light itself, shared from place to place, can hold open a path home. The clerk walks to the bench and touches the back of it lightly. The wood is cool now, but not uncomfortable. The folded cloth feels new, as if placed there very recently. The cup, empty though it is, seems to be waiting for its owner. The whole bench feels less like furniture and more like a held place. A place kept recognizable, not for everyone, but for one particular return. At the far edge of the garden, a gate opens softly. The clerk turns. The old man is arriving, carrying one lantern in his left hand and a small square package in the other. And behind him, walking more slowly than the night, comes the herb grower with another tray of clean glass shades. The garden is ready, and those who tended it know that tonight is not an ordinary autumn evening. The old man sets the lantern down beside the working table, careful not to disturb the oil tin, cloths, or little tools already arranged there. The herb grower places her tray gently beside the first, and together they make the corner of the garden look like a quiet lantern workshop, one that has appeared not for commerce, but for affection. The old man greets the clerk with a warm nod. There is tiredness around his eyes, but it is the ordinary tiredness of someone who has worked kindly through several evenings, not the strained tiredness of worry. If anything, there is a softness in his face that was not there before, a softness made of anticipation. The clerk returns the greeting and asks very gently, "Has she written again?" The old man smiles, then reaches into the inside pocket of his coat. From it, he removes a folded letter, slightly thicker than the card the herb grower had brought before, and hands it to the clerk only for a moment, as if to show that it exists, not to give it away. "It came this afternoon," he says. The envelope is plain, addressed in careful handwriting. The paper is not fine, but lovingly handled. The clerk notices that the top corner has been opened and closed again, opened and closed again, as if the old man has already read it more than once, but still finds something in it worth returning to. Breath in and out. "She says she will arrive before the late bell," the old man says quietly. "Not tomorrow, tonight." The words settle over the garden like an additional layer of light. The clerk does not react loudly. The herb grower does not gasp. No one declares anything dramatic. And yet, every object in the garden seems to become more present. The bench, the folded cloth, the lantern flowers, the little path lights, the gate, the table with its clean shades and spare hooks. All of them suddenly feel no longer like preparation in the abstract, but like preparation with an hour attached to it. The old man continues, reading not from the page now, but from memory. She wrote that the road was delayed 2 days by weather. She wrote that she had worried the lantern flowers might bloom before she could see them. She wrote that she would come quietly, without expecting anyone to make a fuss. She wrote that if the path behind the fences still smelled like rosemary at dusk, she would know she had arrived in the right place before she even reached the gate. The herb grower laughs softly, a small, low laugh of recognition. "It does smell like rosemary," she says, looking out over the beds. The old man nods. "Yes," he says. "Tonight, that may be enough." The clerk understands now why the cloth on the bench is new, why the lantern over the flowers has been lowered just so, why the path is swept, why the latch is lit, why the little working table has been set up, as though one final round of adjustments might still be needed. It is because they are no longer preparing for some future autumn. They are preparing for this evening. The old man folds the letter carefully and places it back into his coat. His hand lingers there for a moment, not out of fear, but out of simple gratitude that the paper is real, that the promise it contains has moved from possibility into time. Tonight, before the late bell, the herb grower begins checking the lanterns again, not anxiously, only with the renewed concentration that comes when care finally knows its deadline. She wipes a lower pane, checks the path lantern by the gate, adjusts the lantern near the bench, then steps back to look at the whole garden. The old man lifts the smallest lantern and moves it half a foot farther from the herb bed, so that the flowers beyond it catch more glow. He says, almost to himself, "She always noticed the flowers first." The clerk walks a few steps away and looks from the gate to the lantern flowers, following the route a returning granddaughter will take. From the gate, she will see the lower lantern by the pathstone, then the pale lantern at the bend, then the bench with its folded cloth and its waiting place, then the little lights over the flowers, now turning quietly orange beneath their leaves. Then, perhaps, the old man standing beneath the warmest lantern of all. It is enough. It is more than enough. It is the kind of preparation that says, without speaking, "We did not stop the season while you were away, but we kept your place in it." The old man turns back toward the clerk. "There is still a little to do," he says softly. The clerk nods. "Of course there is. Not because the garden is incomplete, but because this town likes to meet important moments through practical tenderness. There is always one more hook to check, one more pane to polish, one more cloth to fold, one more bench to warm." And so, with evening deepening gently around them, the three of them begin the last small preparations before the return. The work begins without anyone needing to assign it. That is the way of the shared garden. Each person already knows the rhythm. Each person already understands what the next careful action is. The old man goes first to the lantern above the bench. He checks the chain, then lowers it by one small link, then pauses, steps back, and studies how the light falls across the wooden seat, the folded cloth, and the path beside it. The herb grower watches from the gate, then gives the smallest nod, and the old man leaves it there. The clerk moves toward the path lantern nearest the rosemary bed. The glass is clear, but not perfectly. A faint trace of soot remains in one corner, soft enough that most people would never notice, but enough that under the right angle of light, it leaves a dim shadow where there could instead be warmth. The clerk takes up a cloth and wipes it slowly, carefully, turning the pane little by little until the entire shade is clean. Then the glass is replaced, and the lantern burns more openly, its glow spreading not brighter, but more evenly, like a voice speaking more clearly once the dust is gone. Breath in and out. The herb grower checks the smaller lanterns among the herbs. One is moved slightly higher, so the mint does not cast too large a shadow over the path. Another is rotated by a fraction, so the warm edge of its light reaches the basil leaves without making the nearby flowers too hot. A third is polished, its frame wiped free of soot and oil, then rehung with a cleaner line so that anyone standing near the gate will see it at once. On the working table, spare hooks lie in neat rows. A little tray holds trimmed wicks, and the cloths used for the dirtiest glass are folded away from the clean ones. The old man lifts the wooden box holding the granddaughter's card and letter, then tucks it just beneath the bench, far enough from damp ground, close enough to retrieve later without searching. That, too, is part of the preparation. Not only the visible things, but the remembered things. The letter, the card, the small place where private words can rest among public light. The clerk walks to the row of lantern flowers. Their paper-like husks have begun to turn a richer orange, and under the lowered lantern above them, several now truly resemble tiny hanging lanterns, just as the granddaughter once said. The old man joins the clerk there, holding up one more small lantern and considering its place. Here, he asks quietly. The clerk looks. The herb grower looks too. The lantern is moved half a hand's breadth to the left, then lowered a little, then turned so the warm glow falls along the flowers instead of straight through them. At once, the row takes on a deeper warmth. The orange husks do not blaze. They only deepen, as if the season itself has leaned closer. That is how she liked them best, the old man says softly. Not bright, only warm enough to notice. The clerk understands that this is the shape of the whole evening. Nothing is being made spectacular. The point is not to impress. The point is to let recognition happen easily, to let memory meet the present without needing to struggle through glare or disorder, to let the returning eye rest where it already knows how to rest. The herb grower spreads the fresh cloth across the bench, then smooths it with both hands. A clean cup is placed at one corner. A second cup is added beside it. Then, after a pause, a third. Not because she knows exactly how long the granddaughter will stay, but because sharing tea is one of the town's quiet ways of making arrival gentler. The old man checks the gate latch one last time. The clerk shifts the little lantern near the first pathstone so that the step is easier to see. The herb grower sweeps a stray cluster of leaves from the path. Each gesture is small. Together, they create not a decorated scene, but a trustworthy one. A place where someone returning after absence will not need to ask, "Am I still expected here?" The answer will already be in the arrangement of the light. The sky deepens further. The first truly cool breeze of the evening moves through the herbs. The lanterns sway almost imperceptibly. The garden seems to inhale, as if it too knows the hour is drawing near. The old man stands still at last, looking from the gate to the flowers, from the flowers to the bench, from the bench to the path, checking not perfection, but welcome. The clerk watches him. The herb grower watches too. No one says it, but all three understand the same thing. The garden is ready. After the lanterns are set, none of them moves for a little while. The work has stopped, but the evening has not. The evening continues quietly through the warm glass, through the faint scent of rosemary, through the coolness settling on the fence rails, through the flowers deepening in color beneath the lowered lights. The clerk sits on the bench for a moment, not to claim it, only to feel how the lantern above has changed the space. The folded cloth is soft beneath one hand. The wood of the bench is still cool, but no longer lonely. The little lantern overhead warms the cloth, the cups, and the path beside the bench where a returning step may pause. Breath in and out. The old man remains near the lantern flowers, watching them as if watching a season gather itself. The herb grower stands by the gate, one hand on the latch, as though she wants the first movement of arrival to be easy, not interrupted by fumbling in the dark. The whole shared garden feels suspended between preparation and welcome, between memory and return, between the work of setting the lights and the quiet hope that the one for whom they were set will step through the gate while they still burn. The clerk lets the eyes travel across the details, slowly, one by one. The little path stone near the entrance, the pale lantern above it, the row of herbs with their lowered warmth, the bench with 3 cups waiting, the wooden box beneath it holding letters and cards, the small lantern over the flowers, its glow deepening the orange of the husks, the gate itself, clean, latched, ready to open. This is what it means, the clerk thinks, for a town to keep a place, not by freezing time, not by pretending no one ever left, but by tending the ordinary things so carefully that return can feel immediate when it happens. A returning person does not need the road to look unchanged. They only need it to feel recognizable. A cloth where a cloth would once have been. A bench lit warmly enough to invite rest. Flowers kept through the right season. A path that smells like rosemary at dusk. Lanterns set not too high, not too low, just where memory expects them. The old man speaks at last, not looking away from the flowers. She always came down this path a little too quickly. The clerk looks up. The herb grower smiles. She still will, she says. The old man laughs softly. Yes, he says. Even after all this time, she will still hurry the first few steps. and then slow down when she sees the bench. The clerk imagines it. A figure entering through the gate, moving quickly at first, then pausing, then seeing the flowers, then noticing the familiar arrangement of light, and understanding, all at once, that the town did not stand still in her absence, and yet did not forget her shape within it. The herb grower sets one cup a little closer to the middle of the bench. The old man brushes an invisible speck from the wooden table. The clerk straightens the cloth by a finger's width. Each of these acts is almost too small to mention, and yet they matter. Because welcome in Moonlight Town is made of such things. Not speeches, not decorations. Only the right things in the right place, held there with kindness until they are needed. A breeze moves through the path, and every lantern in the garden sways slightly, one after another, as if a soft, invisible hand has touched the whole arrangement at once. The lights do not grow brighter. They simply shimmer and then return to steadiness. The flowers beneath them keep their warm color. The bench keeps its waiting shape. The gate keeps its easy latch. The garden keeps its breath. And so the three of them wait, not impatiently, not anxiously, only in that particular quiet way that comes a little before someone beloved arrives. The first sign is not a voice, not a footstep, not the sound of the gate. It is a shadow moving softly across the pale lantern near the entrance. Then, a moment later, comes the gentle click of the latch. Not forced, not hurried, only opened by a hand that already knows its shape. The clerk turns, but not abruptly. The old man straightens slowly. The herb grower lowers her hands and steps half a pace back from the gate, as if making room for the path itself to speak first. Breath in and out. A young woman steps through the gate, carrying a small travel bag. The bag is not large. The journey has not announced itself loudly. Her coat holds the dust of the road. The cooler air has touched her face pink at the edges. But her first expression, as she stands just inside the lantern-lit path, is not exhaustion. It is recognition. She stops after only 2 steps, exactly as the old man said she might. Not because she is uncertain, because she sees too much she knows at once. The lowered lantern by the entrance, the rosemary catching the light, the path stone visible at the bend, the little lantern above the bench, the warm glow over the flowers. She smiles, not broadly, not with surprise, but with the deep, soft relief of someone finding that what mattered has remained in place. The old man does not hurry toward her. He simply says, very gently, "You found the path." She answers with an equally soft smile. "I knew it as soon as I smelled the rosemary." The herb grower lets out the quietest laugh. The clerk steps back a little more, giving the path and the reunion enough space to breathe. The young woman moves slowly now, her first quickness gone, replaced by the kind of attention that returning requires. She touches the fence lightly as she passes. She glances at the bench. She notices the 3 cups already waiting. She sees the polished lanterns, the lowered hooks, the tidied edges of the path, and does not need any of it explained. By the time she reaches the lantern flowers, the old man is standing beside them, one hand resting lightly near the stems. He does not speak at once. Neither does she. There are reunions that belong to long speeches. This is not one of them. This is a reunion that belongs to a place already prepared, so that when words do come, they can be small and still enough. At last, he says, "They bloomed in time." She looks at the flowers, then at him, and her eyes soften in a way that makes the whole garden feel warmer. "Yes," she says. "They waited for me." The clerk lowers their gaze slightly, out of respect for the quietness of the moment. The herb grower turns toward the bench and lifts the teapot, as though this, too, was always part of the return. No one cries out. No one makes the reunion larger than the garden can hold. It remains the right size for Moonlight Town. Warm, recognizable, gentle. The granddaughter steps closer to the flowers, setting her travel bag down near the bench, without taking her eyes off the rows beneath the lanterns. Under the warm, lowered light, the lantern flowers are not all fully open, but enough of them have turned that the old childhood name has become visible to anyone willing to see slowly. Their husks hang beneath the leaves like small, folded lanterns, soft orange, paper thin, glowing more richly where the warm light brushes them, and fading to green where the shadows are cooler. The granddaughter kneels beside them, her coat gathering the scent of rosemary and damp soil. She does not reach for the flowers immediately. She simply looks, the way a person looks at something remembered, then found, then quietly confirmed to be real. Breath in and out. "They're exactly where they should be," she says softly. The old man nods. "We thought you should see them first before anything else." She glances toward the bench, toward the lowered lantern, toward the path behind the fences, and then back to the flowers. "I see everything," she says. Not accusingly, not even in surprise, only with gratitude that has not yet decided whether it belongs more to words or to silence. The herb grower pours tea into the waiting cups. The clerk remains near the working table, present but unobtrusive, like part of the garden's arrangement rather than part of the family circle. That feels right too. The clerk's role has always been to follow the town's small signs, carry them gently, and let them arrive where they belong. Tonight, that role is nearly complete. The granddaughter reaches toward one lantern flower at last, not plucking it, only lifting the leaf beside it to see the orange husk more clearly. When I was little, she says, I thought the flowers made the lanterns jealous. The old man smiles. I remember. You said the lanterns wished they could bloom too. She laughs softly, that same low laugh the old man had carried in memory through the earlier evenings. And you said lanterns bloom by staying lit. The herb grower joins with a smile of her own. And I told you flowers shine by standing still. The three of them share that remembered line, and the clerk feels again how this town keeps its continuity, not through grand traditions, but through phrases, routines, arrangements, and gentle repetitions that survive because they remain useful to the heart. The granddaughter stands and walks the path a few steps, seeing what has been changed. The lowered lantern by the gate, the polished glass over the rosemary, the lantern over the bench, the little path stone visible in the right place, the flowers warmed, not brightly, but enough. Each small adjustment says the same thing. We remembered how you see. We remembered how you walk. We remembered which details matter. When she turns back to the old man, there is no dramatic speech waiting. Only a sentence that fits the town perfectly. You kept the light where I would know it. The old man answers simply, we tried. It is enough. More than enough. Because in those two lines, the whole arc of the missing lantern comes quietly to rest. The light was moved, borrowed, lowered, shared, and returned, not because anything was lost, but because someone was being guided home through recognition. The granddaughter lifts her cup of tea, now warm in her hands, and sits at last on the bench beneath the low lantern. The old man sits beside her. The herb grower takes the stool again. The clerk remains nearby, leaning lightly against the working table, watching the scene settle into its proper shape. Warm light, resting flowers, shared tea, a path no longer waiting for a return, because the return has happened. For a while, they drink tea in the little shared garden, with the lanterns arranged just so, and the autumn air moving gently through the herbs. No one tries to fill every silence. No one rushes to tell every story at once. That, too, is part of returning well. To let the place speak first. To let the light settle. To let the body remember before language does. The granddaughter wraps her hands around the cup. The lantern above the bench warms the edge of her sleeve. The old man sits beside her, not leaning heavily, not pressing close, only occupying the place that has waited to be occupied again. The herb grower asks about the road and receives a quiet answer. The clerk asks about the weather in the other town and receives another. Small questions, gentle answers, nothing that drags the evening away from itself. Breath in and out. The granddaughter glances toward the working table, sees the oil tin, spare hooks, cloths, and little tools, and smiles. You prepared everything, she says. The old man shakes his head mildly. Not everything. Only what the night needed. The herb grower adds words, and only what your eyes would notice first. The granddaughter's smile deepens. That was enough. The clerk knows then that the preparation has succeeded in exactly the right way. Not by producing astonishment, not by staging a surprise, but by letting the returning person feel known. That is rarer and gentler and more in keeping with Moonlight Town than any elaborate welcome could be. The granddaughter reaches down and touches the folded cloth beside her. "It's a new one," she says. The herb grower laughs softly. "The old one went missing under a basket of mint last week." The old man nods toward the path. The town has always borrowed little things from itself. Borrowed lanterns, borrowed cloths, borrowed benches for rest, borrowed patience from the season before the flowers bloom. And now, perhaps, no longer borrowed, but returned. The clerk looks out through the path to the bridge beyond. The lantern there still glows warm and steady. The whole chain of light from the bridge, through the path, into the garden, and back toward the post office, feels complete. Nothing is missing now. No lantern, no gesture, no explanation. The granddaughter sets her cup down and says very softly, "I was afraid I might come back and not recognize the season." The old man turns to her. "And do you?" She looks at the flowers, then at the path, then up toward the lantern above the bench. "I recognize it completely," she says. The clerk lowers their eyes again, allowing the sentence to remain undisturbed. This is the point toward which the whole story has been moving. Not merely the return of a person, but the confirmation that a place can remember how to receive them. Later, after the first cups of tea have been emptied, a softer silence settles over the shared garden. Not the silence of uncertainty, not the silence before arrival. A different silence now. The silence that comes after recognition has already happened, and nothing needs to be proved anymore. The granddaughter remains on the bench, one hand resting on the folded cloth, the other lightly around the cup. The old man sits beside her, his shoulders easier now, as if some small, long-held effort has finally exhaled. The herb grower stands once more, not because there is urgent work, but because tending remains its own comfort. She checks one lantern, then another, more out of habit than necessity. The clerk watches the path, the gate, the bridge beyond, and thinks of all the small acts that led to this evening. The missing lantern at the bridge, the borrowed light over seedlings, the lowered lantern by the bench, the polished glass near the lane, the pathstone made visible, the shared garden prepared in advance, the card on the bench, the later letter, the flowers turning orange just in time. None of those things, on their own, would have seemed like a grand story. Each one would have looked small, practical, almost ordinary. And that, the clerk realizes, is why the town could carry so much feeling inside them. In Moonlight Town, care survives best when it can live inside ordinary actions. That way, it does not depend on being announced. It can be repeated, shared, inherited. Breath in and out. The granddaughter lifts her gaze toward the path. "I thought I might have changed too much," she says after a while. The old man does not answer quickly. He gives the sentence the same respect he would give a lowered lantern hook or a fragile stem. At last, he says, "Perhaps, but the path still knew where to place the light for you." The herb grower smiles without turning around. "And you still knew where to look." The granddaughter's expression softens, and the clerk thinks that this is another reason the town keeps a place. Not to prevent change, but to make change feel less lonely when someone returns. The path need not be identical. The flowers need not bloom exactly as they did before. The bench can have a new cloth. The lanterns can hang a little lower. But if the care is recognizable, then the place itself remains welcoming. Warm lantern light, resting flowers, safe path, returning step. Again, warm lantern light, resting flowers, safe path, returning step. The old man reaches beneath the bench, retrieves the small wooden box, and takes out the earlier card and the newer letter. He does not read them again. He simply holds them for a moment, then tucks them away inside his coat. They are no longer the only bridge between absence and return. Tonight, the bridge is the lit path itself. The flowers, the bench, the tea, the town. The clerk feels a quiet completion settling over the evening. Not the completion of something shut away, but of something brought gently back to its place. The missing lantern was never really about what had vanished. It was about where the light had gone, and whom it had gone there for. Later still, the clerk leaves the shared garden and returns toward the post office. The path behind the fences is easy to walk now, not because it is bright, but because every lantern stands exactly where it should. The gate latch shines softly. The path stone shows its edge. The pale lantern at the entrance keeps a gentle watch. Behind the fences, the flowers rest beneath lowered light. On the bench, 3 cups cool together. The clerk passes the bridge, where the once missing lantern glows above the water, steady and ordinary again. What had once seemed like the beginning of a mystery now feels like the first sign of a welcome quietly being assembled. The bridge remembers. The lane remembers. The garden remembers. And now, so does the clerk. Breath in and out. Back at the post office, the lamp on the counter burns low and warm. Letters rest in their trays. Drawers are closed. Nothing waits to be solved. Nothing remains unsettled. Outside, Moonlight Town grows quieter with each passing minute. The bakery is dark now. The library lamp is gone. The bridge keeps only its soft glow over the water. The shared garden holds its small lanterns close to the flowers. Autumn has arrived, and the town has met it in the way it meets everything important. Not with noise, but with care placed in the right locations. If you are still listening, that is fine. If you are drifting away, that is perfect. You do not need every detail. You only need the feeling of it. That somewhere, in a small lantern town, light was shared so gently from place to place that a returning person could find home without ever having to ask where it was. Warm lantern light, quiet bridges, resting flowers, safe streets. Again, warm lantern light, quiet bridges, resting flowers, safe streets. The clerk lowers the post office lamp just a little. Not off, only softer. And outside, Moonlight Town does the same. The lanterns continue burning in the right places. The path remains visible. The flowers remain warmed. The town remains ready, not for waiting now, but for rest. And you can rest too. Good night, and sleep well.